Hey guys.
Don't kill children, don't let them over. Let them live their life, let them get older.
For this, I wasn't really too sure, but I wanted to go through one of my favorite series. As we see here, this is the the last volume in the trades. You see the Eisner and Harvey Award winning Gotham Central. I think they weren't really sold on the title until they saw the logo. I think in the second trade, Greg Rucka's introduction, I think, talks about how they weren't sold on the title until I think they went over the editor's head and they doodled the badge or something, the logo, and then because they wanted to call it something ridiculous, something like Cold Case. I can't remember the title, something really awful. And really on the nose. And then they didn't like Gotham Central. They didn't like the title of the book. And then I think they went to the vice president of, I don't know, something or other. And once they saw the badge and they go, oh yeah, it's a go, boom. And then so that's how that happened. So we'll just, these are the trades here. Dead Robin, Quick and the Dead, Unsolved Targets, a great one. And then Half-Life. But now, let's start with the first one, which is In the Line of Duty. This is really interesting because it's been so long since I actually read this book. I actually forgot completely about Volume 1. I always assumed it was Rena Montoya. That's in my mind. I thought, oh yeah, it's an ensemble and Rena Montoya is our anchor, right? You have the Lawrence Block introduction. I've not read any of Lawrence Block. I mean, Matthew something or other is his title character, right? I do have a book on writing that he wrote, which is pretty cool, on the craft of writing, but I don't actually have any or read any of Lawrence Block's work. So you can let me know in the comments down below if it's any good and which ones to check out. It's really interesting here. And again, you know, it's funny to me because, you know, Ed Brubaker, you can see a lot of Ed, what Ed does on this book in later work. And we'll talk about that when we get to it, sidebar that, right? So I jumped onto this book because of Greg Rucka, ultimately. Probably Whiteout was one of my favorite books, which I'll do probably later on, talk about that in you know, maybe review that. But like from the start here, which is really, really cool, is they don't really mess about. There's no real fat. And the great thing about Michael Lark here is, like, I mean, how many panels? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 panels, and you don't feel it at all. And there's a lot of word balloonage here, but you don't really feel it because, you know, there isn't much action in this book, but, you know, the idea of comics as a visual medium is very telling. And it's a great artist that can take a lack of action and make it dynamic and make it interesting and make it seamless. You get so immersed in this book. It is like watching a great cop TV show, and then boom, there we go. We see there, written by Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. It's interesting where, this is so difficult, isn't it? We have to sidebar it. So it's interesting. Now we have a kidnap case, and we have these two detectives that get a tip-off from a junkie, and then later on in the book, they pretty much tell you that they knocked on the wrong door. That's what happened. They knocked on the wrong door. This is very dark. You know, we don't know how dark this moment is here. I don't know if you can see that. But that moment here, this panel, is horrifying when looked back on. It really is. And then we get introduced to the bullpen there. I think Stacy becomes, I mean, again, as an ensemble, it's very, very interesting because this is an ensemble comic book. And I just want to point out something about the colorist. The colorist here is Noel Giddings, I think. And, you know, Matt Hollingsworth, I think, and Elizabeth Bretz-Weiser, I'm so sorry I blanked on her name, and actually it's really interesting because the colorists here, you know, these kind of slightly desaturated, faded out colors give it a real gritty kind of police procedural sense. You know, it's got a real gritty. This is really quite something. It's really frightening. We haven't made the connection there yet, but then we will connect it later on. That Freeze pretty much froze Marcus's partner Charlie here, Charlie Fields, and then pretty much just broke his body apart in front of Marcus. So it's very dark, but I like the fact that it's implied. They don't really show us, they just allow us to connect the dots there. Great work by Greg. I'm not sure, like Ed Baker said a wonderful thing on Iron Fist with Matt Fraction, in which he talked about how everything is intermingled. So the stuff that you assumed Matt wrote is stuff that Ed wrote, and the stuff that Ed wrote you assume Matt Fraction would have written. So they're both doing different muscles. Like I think we assume Fraction stuff would be more quippier and I don't want to say sillier, that's not the right word, but more irreverent, and Ed Baker stuff would be more kind of crimey and noiry and serious, but actually it's the opposite is true. So I think in terms of writing duties, it's really interesting. Is it more a case of like they intermingle and talk through the stories themselves, and then, or is it Greg writes one issue, then Ed writes one issue, then Greg writes one issue, then Greg. I don't know how it works, to be honest with you. I didn't do the basic of research. So let's talk about, we have Chris Allen and Rena Montoya. It's really interesting. The Dark Knight animation, which is kind of like the Animatrix equivalent. I think people that worked on Animatrix also worked on the Dark Knight animation collection of shorts. And it's really great because Brian Azzarello writes one, Greg Rucka writes one, Dave Goyer writes one. But Greg's one is really interesting because it's about Chris Allen. And it also feels like a bit of a prequel to this, where this is before Chris was down with Batman. Although Renee is not his partner in that. It's actually another Hispanic Latino detective from the movie, from the Dark Knight movie, who is being blackmailed, I think, and betrays the team, and I think is being blackmailed for the Joker or something. I can't really remember, but yeah, it's that character. But it's really interesting. Here we have what's interesting about Charlie is if we go back to this moment here, which, I mean, this is great. You pick up a lot in this book with rereading. And you reread, you pick up and you notice things. Like Charlie here pushes Marcus out of the way. I don't know if you guys can see that, which is really, really cool. And even here, you know, you assume that Marcus is the good cop and Charlie, but Charlie's just being a bit of a wiseacre, you know, where he's busting chops and busting Marcus's balls about overtime and, you know, why are we doing this after hours? I could be at home with my wife. Instead, we're working on this case and going beyond the call of duty. And just busting Marcus's balls. And then when we come to this moment, and again, still in issue 1, this moment here, we realize that actually Charlie was a good guy. You know, he was a cop that went on beyond the call of duty. Again, I want to talk about Michael Lark here because it's fine draftsmanship. You know, there's so many panels per page and you never feel it. And also, even with Greg Rucka, I mean, there's so many speech balloons here. You know, there's a saying when anyone, I guess during the era of Bendis, when Bendis was ruling everything, there'd be so many writers doing their best Brian Michael Bendis impression, and there'd be all these balloons on a page. And new writers would do that, and editors will say, well, you can't do that. And new writers will go, oh, but Brian Michael Bendis. And they go, well, you're not Brian Michael Bendis. It takes a very experienced writer who knows what he's doing to really do something like this. But Greg Rucka is a veteran, right? And you don't feel it. Not really. These first, I think these first 2 issues, or maybe I think it's the first issue. I think these first 2 issues, it's interesting. They're written by both Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker here. So I guess they're both co-writing, but it's a lot of word balloonage. It's really interesting because I love this moment here. I think this is the cliffhanger ending. I mean, this is page 28. I don't know how many pages per issue of the average comic book in 2000s, you know. So I don't really know. it really annoys me because you don't know when the cutoff period is. So I think this is a cliffhanger. So instinctively, I want to say this is probably the end of issue 1, and this is the beginning of issue 2. This is really, really great. So here we have Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka for issue 2. It's a great moment when they're identifying Charlie Fields' body. His wife Nora, you will learn later on, actually works in the Quincy division. She's I want to say paleontologist, but I think that's dinosaurs. She's a pathologist. Sorry, she's a pathologist. So she's what do they call it? Coroner. She's a coroner. And works in the coroner department. I guess I'm pretty sure that's not how you say that word. Forgive me, guys. Detective Allen. I don't know what he becomes. Like Rena Montoya becomes the question, right? But then Chris Allen becomes something which I actually own. And for the life of me, I'm not great with superheroes. You have to forgive me, guys. But he becomes something, right? I could Google it, but you can keep me honest in the comments down below because I have no idea what he becomes. Maggie Sawyer is the captain there. I think Maggie is interested. Proby. Hang on. I'm sorry, guys. Let me go back a couple pages because there was something interesting, or maybe I missed it. I think with Maggie's introduction, there's a real interesting moment where the guy she's arguing with, right? Who's the lieutenant, I think. There we go. Boom. This is a very great moment. I'm not sure if this pays off. One of the great things that annoys me, when I was a teenager, I could crack, it's only 5 trades. I could crack 13 in a night, right? Or in a day. I was just reading it like crack. Now that I'm old, my neurological pathways, I don't know what's happened. I could barely make 1 trade paperback collection of comic books, of single issue comic books in a night. It's awful. So a Lieutenant Probson, this is a great moment of tension. I don't know if this is paid off later, and it's great when you can read all those trades in one sitting. You get a real artifice. It's like binge watching your favorite TV show on Netflix, but it's so hard because it's reading, right? So I don't really know, and you can see how something develops. I want to say I don't believe that Ed and Greg had they had worked so much stuff out, but I don't think they knew necessarily where they're going because this book changes so many ways. You can see it's a book that's growing organically and evolving on the move. So I don't think they've worked out their story from point A to point B, but they definitely have colored in a lot of stuff. So this is great. Here we have the clock. The clock motif will kick in. There's the clock there. Now, I don't know. I've not looked at it too closely, the clock, to actually realize. If you see the clock there in the top left-hand corner, I don't know if I've worked out enough to actually... I don't look at it, but I don't know if they've actually figured out the time of the cases. I think in later introductions, they talk about how they figured out day shift and night shift and the rotation and the shift work and who's working when and what and where. So it wouldn't surprise me if in real time they figured out this case and who's doing what. Brubaker now does this. We could skip this. The way they're putting the case together is really, really interesting, and the way, like a lot of police procedurals, the way they're putting the clues together. At first, it seems overwhelming, but when you go back and reread it, you can see how they connect the dots and go from point to point to point to point to point. But I want to talk about, this is what I want to talk about, Michael Lark and Restless, right? Reckless is a series of graphic novels that Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker do, which is kind of their Parker series, or Lou Archer, which is, Brubaker's a huge fan of Lou Archer and the series of books. And I actually think I own 3 books based on Brubaker liking Lee Archer, and they're on my shelf. So I've got a Lou Archer. I've got to figure out some time to read them. But between comics, when do you get the time? So Reckless is a series of books, and you feel like with Scenes of a Crime, that was Brubaker's plan as well, but he didn't take it off. There was only that one hardback and a series of short stories that are in the hardback collection of Scenes of a Crime. But it thinks everything that you can see that funneled through to Criminal and to Reckless, that kind of that you can even far back in Scenes of a Crime, you can kind of see some stuff going on there. Is it Scenes of a Crime? Or was it Scenes of a Crime, because the photographer, the crime scene photography, right? So there they put the case together, which is kind of cool. I think there's Romy Chandler and Nate Patton. I'm not sure. Did they do anything with these other characters? I mean, was Chris Allen invented for Gotham Central, or was he always there? Like Rena Montoya, right? And was Rena Montoya uniform? Was she a uni before they made a detective in this book? Or was she a detective before? Because there are some great moments that we'll talk about later. Anyway, so Scenes of the Crime there wasn't a series of books. I think as of recording this, I think Reckless has like 4 books in the series. And I really love that idea of doing this crime detective series with this character, like Jack Reacher, like Parker, like a detective, like Lou Archer, just a series of books. I don't think that's really been done necessarily. Well, of course it's been done. I mean, Dylan the Dog has been done several times, but not in quite the way that that Burbaker's doing it. But that's where I know Michael Lark from, to be honest with you, which is great stuff. But yeah, any of the other detectives, did they go on to do anything? Because at least 2 of these cops go on to be in the superhero universe. You know, Chris Allen and Rena Montoya becoming the Question. They go on to do other things, right? This is interesting how this ties back into further cases. And then we have Jim Gordon here. It is a great moment. Keeping the superhero fight sequences off panel, is so good because you don't really need it. Like I said, Michael Lark is such a great artist that you didn't even miss the action. He takes a bunch of talking heads and makes it so dynamic. There's a great moment here. This really signals out the book in a weird way, with the tension between real cops and this gothic vigilante is interesting. And we have the end here. So I guess that's the end of the 2 issues. That would be a pilot. And what a hell of a pilot if they were to turn this into a TV show. Now, this is issue 3. So this is where Burbaker takes over. Now, I'm not sure if Greg has any say in this or what, or if this is just, but I mean, again, it's written by Ed Burbaker. So is it based on something? Did they come up with a story Bible and then Ed is it like they both write the Bible and then Ed just takes this part of the Bible? I don't know. It's neither here nor there. This is really strong. And again, look how many panels that is, you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 panels. Seamless. Michael Lark is just so good. He's so good. And it's just, it's so immersive. It's unbelievably immersive when you read this book. It's crazy how you don't feel the weight of the lack of the action and the weight of the dialogue balloons. Like, it's dialogue, talk. But it's like, again, this is a cop show in comic book form. That's exactly what this is, you guys. If you like Law and Order, and again, here's the police board with the different cases, right? So it's very much hard police procedural here. We have the bulletin board, and all detectives have their caseload. They have their caseload, so it's not one case they're dealing with; it's several at several times. This is great work, by the way, as well. Here we have Nate Patton here. I'm not sure. I think I might have missed the foreshadowing of, or maybe not. But like, yeah, Nate Patton having a crush on Romy Chandler is there. There's a little playfulness there. I'm not sure if much is made of Driver's survival guilt and post-traumatic stress, having watched his partner die in such a horrific way. I'm not sure if they play that off later. Again, part of me was slightly disappointed because I probably should have read the whole series between doing this one. It's nice once you've gotten to the end of something to go back to the beginning and see where the seeds were and how everything fits, and also the development of how a book grows. And I think now's a good time to talk about police procedurals anyway, especially hard police procedurals. A detective having a caseload immediately puts it as a hard police procedural. And here we have the coroner who will make another appearance. And again, so this is great stuff. Like, you talk about hard police procedural. So the Lewis kidnapping case was the case that started it off. So Marcus and Charlie had a drug tip on the Lewis kidnapping case, and they go to this place and they find that Freeze is there. So there's some weird miscommunication that happens. Freeze is there. Freeze pretty much kills Marcus's partner in the form of Charlie Fields, and now they're working their kidnapping case, and they find out that the body was found. The body was the mosquitoes on the body, which the pathologist has found, put the time of death somewhere between 10 p.m. on Thursday and noon, unless the body was kept in storage. But the ransom note didn't arrive until Friday. So now they know that the girl was dead before the kidnapper typed the note. So the note was a distraction. But this is really good stuff. I think, it's a great time. So I really like police procedurals. I guess Burbaker and probably Greg are huge fan of Dave Simon's Homicide: Life on the Street. At this point now, of course, The Wire hasn't been on, I don't think, but Homicide: Life on the Street, or Homicide, is landmark in the terms of police procedural, landmark in television. They have an episode, I believe in season 1, which is a bottle ship episode of just the detectives in an interrogation room trying to get a serial killer to break, trying to get a serial killer to confess. It's amazing. But Homicide: Life on the Street is such a slow burn. I'm reminded of the Robin Williams, Jake Gyllenhaal episode, where Robin Williams is in it as a guest star and Jake Gyllenhaal plays his kid. And his wife was shot during a robbery. And one of the Baldwin brothers plays the detective, and he's joking in the bullpen about all the OT he can book, all the overtime he can book. And then Robin Williams yells at him, goes, "What kind of people are you that you would joke like this?" This is a lovely moment here. I really like this moment, guys. Again, Michael Lark, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's getting his Dave Gibbon. Oh no, Dave Gibbon is 9-panel special, isn't it? It's 8 panels and you don't feel it. It's a nice little moment here, like a nice little silent beat there, where we're seeing the bonding of Marcus Driver and Romy Chandler, as their relationship deepens. So they're kind of flirting, which ultimately will bring tension and conflict later on with Nate Patton. But I don't know. I don't remember. It's been too long. I haven't read this book probably outside of being a teenager, which is crazy. Really dating myself here, but literally sometimes. Anyway, this is some great stuff. Sidebar, right? So let's go back to that. And so Robin Williams is yelling, "What kind of people are you? My wife's just died and you're joking about how you'll be able to get extra money," which is the gist of it, He's being very sarcastic. Yeah, my wife died, but okay, good. You get some extra money. How much they're paying you? How much do you actually make on OT? And he's giving him the bollocking, essentially. He's giving him beasting of his life. And then Yofat Koto, who plays the captain on Homicide, pulls him aside and talks about the caseload. And he talks about how, last week, I'll never forget, it's great writing. Last week he found some elderly woman was raped, like elderly rape. She was raped. And then the week before that, a baby in a dumpster. And then the week before that. And so your wife died and it's horrible. But next week he's going to be dealing with some equally horrible case. So gallows humor is the way that these cops handle seeing the worst things you've ever seen. You've experienced something horrible, but these detectives constantly, every week, are dealing with something horrible, and this is the way they get through it. This is the way they survive it. This is the way they keep distance on it. Otherwise, they would break them. It's a great moment here of Marcus. Anyway, so Homicide: Life on the Street is a big one. I mean, that's Dave Simon as a reporter for the Baltimore something or other, embedded with the homicide Bolton murder homicide squad in Baltimore. And I think he spent a year with them embedded, and just it really is probably the blue book. And I think if you're going to write police procedural, if you're going to write anything with detectives, that's the book you get, right? And, I like it, everything from, I was a huge fan of Law and Order SVU back in the day. That was very dark. Now, because I think the defeat of the prevailing era of rape culture, they don't have to do such dark punch-out episodes. I'm reminded of some of my faves, the Michael J. Fox's wife, I can't remember her name, I think the character's name was Parker. Is a great episode of SVU. Just breaks your heart. One of the most brutalist episodes because it ends on one of the total downers. But you know, SVU back in the day wasn't afraid to end an episode on like just the darkest thing ever. To really drive home and they would have these weird bullpen moments where they talk about, you know, 1 out of every rape is not reported, and they'd give you with factoids. They'd have these awful factoids about rape culture, and it's just so dark. It's really, really dark, really dark. And now it's not as dark, but I think it's like 20. I think it's been running for like 23 years. I think it's in its 24th season, but I don't watch it anymore. It doesn't really appeal to me anymore. It's not as dark. It doesn't have to be as dark anymore, but it's just not as dark. Anyway, so yeah, Law and Order. It feels very Law and Order SVU. Homicide: Life on the Street, which I think with Top 10, Alan Moore just rewrote, right? He rewrote Homicide: Life on the Street episodes as a sci-fi superhero cop show, which is also equally good. Hill Street Blues comes to mind as well. Hill Street Blues. In fact, with the death of Charlie Fields in the opening episode, that's very Hill Street Blues or The Shield is almost. I mean, The Shield has probably one of the best pilot twists of any TV show I've ever seen. In fact, so good, I think Alex Garland played upon it for Devs as well. I think Terry was the name of the cop, and you think, okay, Terry's going to be our protagonist, investigating these dirty cops, you know, the kind of Rampart scandal in LA, this kind of gang squad division, and it's going to investigate them. And funnily enough, right? Funnily enough, the Rampant scandal that inspired The Shield also happened for Dave Simon's We Own This City, which is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. What's interesting about We Own This City is that it becomes almost a metaphor for how any cop can do anything at any time, right? Like they actually weren't they carrying like pellet guns for when they shoot someone, they can, or air pistols or something, like fake guns, prop guns. So when they shoot someone accidentally, they can just take the gun out of their boot and put it on the just crazy stuff they were doing with We Own the City. And John Bethenhall, or JB, you know, as the Punisher, is terrific in We Own the City. He is so amazing in We Own the City. I loved We Own the City. I was terrified the whole time, but I was amazed. They actually have that book in my library, so I should pick it up. But you know, Dave Simon is fascinating, you know, and him and Ed and the work that him and Ed, is it Ed? I want to say Ed Burns, but like, probably not Ed Burns. But the stuff him and Ed do is absolutely amazing. Ed used to work the job, didn't he? Ed used to be on the job, if you will, using police parlance. We've skipped so much stuff. I'm so sorry, guys, but I just love this so much. But yeah, Generation Kill, and which again is a reporter embedded in the first 100 days of the Iraq invasion, embedded with a military tank, right? Like the 1st Battalion, I think. Generation Kill is probably the greatest thing written about war that really does what Dave Simon does. Just writes the reality of it and takes away all the cliches and all the tropes. So, and then what you're left with is something that is less dramatically satisfying, but almost equally satisfying because it's authenticity and it's reality. It gets at something richer and deeper. And you see that in The Wire, which avoids all... It really makes you go, oh, it exposes all the cliches and all the tropes, because a lot of police procedurals are written by TV writers that have only watched police procedurals. So all the cliches and all the tropes are there, you know. I mean, and again, I think like Dragnet and Jake Carr, you know, Point Five, Miami Vice, whatever it is, you know, police procedurals are very interesting. These are probably more soft police procedurals, even if they have police consultants. They're probably more soft police procedurals. And again, the way they're putting together the crimes are really amazing. And again, the real confidence here. In my library, they actually have a collection of Ed Brubaker's early work, which is it's pretty rough, and Brian K. Vaughan's early work, you know, and these are like single issue fill-in issues for Batman or whatever. It's a total cash grab, but it's for those who are just really excited about like Ed Brubaker and Brian K. Vaughan and want to see where they started, you know, where they grow. Um, Ironically, Ed was an artist like Grant Morrison, like Alan Moore. He started off like Brian Michael Bendis. He started off as an artist, right? Like, and a very good artist. If you guys have read Low Life, and I'll dig out Low Life in my collection, it's great to see. And again, it's really funny to me that he started off with Low Life. He started off doing pretty much criminal, you know what I mean? Like it's like with Matt Fraction and Rex Mantooth and Casanova, not so much with Kirkman and Battle Pope. You can't really see it there, but definitely with Low Life, you can see, which was more like Bukowski and William Burroughs. I guess that's what, you know, with Junkie and Queer, but specifically Junkie, that's where Ed was coming at it from with Low Life. But it was really weird. It wasn't until we went, okay, yeah, I can do Low Life. But rather than do it like Bukowski or I can't remember, Herbert Huckleby or something like that, or William Burroughs' Junkie, what if I did it as a genre? What if I did it in the vein of all these crime books that I like and that I read? What if I did it like that? So there's a great through line between criminal and Low Life, I think. And probably everything he's written, to be honest with you. Here we have the breakthrough. This was, at first, it was very hard with this case to connect everything. But on reread, it totally holds up. And it's this, even though it's funny, even though it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Even though it's, 6 issues or whatever, even though it's 6 issues, this feels like an hour of Law and Order. Like this feels like episode 1 of Law and Order. I mean, Gotham Central is a TV show just waiting to happen. They keep threatening to make it, but it is waiting to happen. But it is essentially, we're coming to the end now, but it's essentially an hour Law and Order. You read one case. Let's talk about The Wire for a second anyway. It's an episode of Law and Order is what it is, but let's slow it down a bit. I love that. I love this where you have page numbers, but without actually breaking up the issues. It's hard to kind of, so I like page numbers, but I also like where they put the covers. I don't like the cover gallery at the back. I like the covers actually interrupting. But maybe that's a bit too Breckian. I think the seamlessness, if you constantly have the covers there, it interrupts the read because, you know, you're really reminded of how episodic it is. It doesn't feel like one story. So maybe that's the reason why they push all the covers to the back. But I actually like it where they put the covers so I can go, oh yeah, this is issue 1, this is issue 2. It makes it easier to break it down, to get past the artifice and really see the process. I haven't talked enough about Michael Lark. I'm sorry, guys. I can't say enough. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 panels. And look at the word balloons here. Again, you're not bogged down and you don't feel it at all. But like I said, as we get to the end, it's interesting. The Wire, one of the great things that I've never seen done before. In The Wire, McNulty is our anchor in the ensemble that is The Wire. Prespeluski is a peripheral character in season 1. In season 4, Prespeluski is the anchoring of the ensemble, you know, kind of anchoring the story, even though the stories are about the kids. And also season 4 of The Wire really, really dovetails and sinks in nicely with Takashi Kitano's Kids Return. But I think there's something primal, perennial, and universal about boxing, kids, and crime, and kids turning away from crime with boxing. You know, and again, I think there's also a movie, 24, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a Shane Meadows movie about the same thing, boxing, criminality, and kids. They're just themes that go really well together. Anyway, you know, so Prespeluski is the anchor, or our story anchor, our in, and McNulty is peripheral in season 4. And I've never seen that done before, where you just switch out the main character with a side character, and then the main character becomes the side character, and the side character becomes the main character for the season. A little bit of that goes on here. I'd forgotten that Michael Driver was our anchor. Like, yeah, under Greg Rucka, the first 2 issues, you could make an argument, are a combination, you know, Rini Montoya and Marcus kind of share. And then after, when Ed is writing it, Marcus becomes our anchor, in which all the other characters sort of orbit. This is a great face-off. Again, thematically really setting up where this series is going to go. Batman is a vigilante that a lot of the cops are either pro or anti or uneasy. I wish in future series they make more of obvious Marcus's post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD. and make more of what it means to watch your partner die in such a brutal and horrific way. But I like the fact that we went to a dark place, but we end on a nice little rhythm here, a nice little beat. Now, I'd forgotten, because this becomes very much a character piece, you know, this Law and Order thing. I don't think the series would have survived that long doing this, like 6 issues per case or 5, you know, I don't think, but I like it. Like, seasonal arc, they have overreaching cases, right? So it feels like this whole season 1 of this book was the Lewis kidnapping case, right? And like a lot of great detective, you know, like a lot of detective stories, 2 cases become one case, right? The 2 cases that a detective is working dovetails into one case. We have these great Michael Lark covers. Oh, Michael Lark is so good. Whatever happened to Michael Lark? He's so good, you guys. So good. Anyway, the next book becomes very character driven, very Rena Montoya. A lot of it is made about that book, and Greg Rucka talks about it in his introduction. It's very, very interesting. But I loved it. That's what turned Gotham Central to me, to a book that I was reading because I liked Greg Rucka, to a book that became a must read. And it's funny to me, I don't pick up anything that I can't remember. The last Greg Rucka book I picked up was Queen and Country and Elektra, right? But those were years ago. I can't, dude, we're talking maybe 15 years or whatever, maybe. And then I don't read Greg Rucka anymore. You know, I haven't read anything at his IDW, not for any reason, I just haven't. Whereas Ed Brubaker now is a must read. But when I was reading Gotham Central, I wasn't reading it for Ed Brubaker. In fact, Ed Brubaker probably annoyed me. I was like, I want Greg Rucka. But yeah, the Rena Montoya stuff is the stuff that really resonates with me. And evidently it becomes quite character driven, but I haven't completed the series. I only read up to when they kind of, spoiler alert, I guess, when they kind of turn against Batman, you know, and they're not on it anymore. They're not putting up with his vigilante bullshit. And it's great. It's really, really good stuff. But that's what I read up to. So it would be interesting to see and complete the series and also know where the characters go, you know. Because, yeah, we've got Romy Chandler, we've got Nate Patton there, but there's a whole bunch of other characters as well. Marcus Driver, obviously. But there's a whole bunch of peripheral characters that have been introduced here, and it's just interesting to see where they go. Also, let me go back, because there's a park sequence here where they foreshadow the introduction of the black detective with an Irish name. I'm sorry, you guys. Where is it? Is it here? They're in the park, aren't they? I remember them being in the park. Where is it? Oh, God. I didn't talk about the case either, which annoys me. I just really didn't have time. Oh, there we go. So I heard they've got a chick coming up. Some black girl with an Irish name. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't remember that. You know, I'm at least four trades in. So even at the 4th trade, I don't remember that. That's a great abandoned storyline. Or maybe it's a reference to another series that is going on at this time. I don't know what that is a reference to. You can keep me honest in the comments down below if you know what that is a reference to. That'd be very, very interesting to see. But yeah, I can't say enough about Michael Lark. Oh my God, we've got to talk about Noel Giddings as well. I think interesting, like if I remember correctly, yeah. The pilot episode, or not really the pilot, but if it was a TV series, it'd be the pilot episode. The colors are a little bit more desaturated. I think they're a little bit more faded. And again, in the 2nd trade, they show all these 90s comic books from Rena Montoya, the Greg Rucka stuff that he wrote in the 90s, I think. And it's totally different. I mean, the art style, the coloring, it's really interesting to see, you know. Yeah, definitely in terms of the coloring here, definitely you can tell that you know, Noelle worked. I wonder what Noelle's up to now. She worked on a lot of it changed up a little bit, but I love the coloring here. Like Matt Hollingsworth's coloring on 7 to Eternity is great. Elizabeth is coloring. I think she's now Ed's regular colorist, not just for Sean. I think she did coloring for Fade Out, obviously. Fade Out, another great ensemble piece that you think, you know, again, in future trades, they would have like these almost like a bulletin board of photographs at the beginning of every trade, so you can tell who's who. So you can always go, oh, I wonder who this character is. You can flip back to the front of the book and go, oh yeah, this is the character. They did that in Fade Out as well. So there's a definite link between Gotham Central and Fade Out, which I loved. Fade Out. I mean, that's a HBO television series waiting to happen as well. And so is this. I'd hate to see this on the CW. I really would. Gotham Central on the CW, please God, no. But on HBO Max or something, yes, please. Yes, please. And I guess in a weird way, you know, they could do it, right? Like, I guess, well, I mean, a lot of stuff on HBO has been put on hold, right? Like the Constantine series that they're going to do at HBO Max. But I guess they could easily do Gotham Central at HBO Max, you know. But I think Dave Simon wouldn't. It'd be great to see Dave Simon adapt it, but I don't think he would. But this is just gritty, man. It's just so good. You know. And again, there's so little action. And yet, what amounts to a bunch of talking heads, Michael Lark just knocks it out of the park, guys. And then Noel Giddings does this great work with colorists. Elizabeth, I think, also does the coloring for Velvet as well. I think I want to say it's Ed Brubaker and Steve Niffins. I'm so sorry if it's not Steve. Oh my God, what was I thinking? I really should have looked that up. Yeah, Velvet is great as well. Dude, I've got to dig out Velvet. That is so good. Like, what if Moneypenny was Jason Bourne? And what if James Bond was a shared universe, right? Because I'm not going to get into that Velvet. James Bond, oh no, I'm not going to get into Velvet. We don't have time. That's just silly. We'll talk about it. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, I wish I talked more about the case load, really. But maybe you shouldn't, because I guess if you want people to read it, right, you shouldn't just give everything away. But I can't recommend Gotham Central enough. I love it. I'm not saying it's a must read or anything like that, but just the idea of doing different things with comic books. Word and pictures, as Harvey Pecker said, you can do anything with words and pictures. Even a cop show as a comic book can be done. There's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff here. Ed Burker's always great for back matter, I guess. But one reason to read single issues is because of the back matter, which a lot of times you don't really get. But you get some of these behind the scenes stuff, which is always cool in trades. Hardbacks, you get a lot more, right? You get a lot more supplementary stuff. Anyway, that was Gotham Central Volume 1, or Season 1, if you will, by Ed Brubaker, Greg Ruck, and Michael Lark. A very enjoyable read. What's great is this is a great first trade. The second trade is very different, right? Where it's pretty much focusing on Rena Montoya. That's where the Eisner Hari Award stuff comes from. That was the stuff that turned this book into a must read. Now that I go back and read it as an adult, this stuff, this In the Line of Duty, Law and Order stuff, is the stuff that I really enjoy. And the Rena Montoya stuff is a bit but I don't know, like that's my feeling on it. But I haven't, like I said, I've not gone back and read the series with adult eyes. This volume is the one that I've read with adult eyes. And it held up so well and was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I'd almost forgotten about this. I'd thought that Gotham Central had started with Rena Montoya as the lead. So I think it gets very character study with Rena Montoya and her battles. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry, you guys. Jesus, we can't get out of here, can we? There is a great sequence. This just reminded me. I should have been, I'm so sorry, you guys. There's a great sequence here. Not a sequence, but there's a great sort of piece of foreshadowing here. And that's what I forgot. It foreshadows a little bit. I mean, it's all over the place. So Nate Patton's, so it's after the basketball thing, which I think is a riff on SVU, actually. I think there's a line in SVU about Richard Belcher, that's it, as John Munch, who is, with Saint Elsewhere. He's been on The Simpsons, The X-Files. He links a whole bunch of TV shows. So, yeah, these kids hit Marcus with a baseball, right? With a basketball. So in SVU Season 1, there is a really cool reference to, where's the line? The line is Romy. I'm all over the place. Oh, so I don't know where the elevator thing comes from. Maybe that's in the SVU thing. Probably not. I think there might be a Benson and Stabler thing where the criminal takes the stairs and they take the elevator. I don't know. Or the lift, as we say in the UK. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Wrong. Assault on an officer, for starters. That'll get you sometime in Sprains Hall Juvenile Detention Center. You can see how much real brothers like rich white kids co-opting their culture, dog. There is a line in S for You, which Richard Belter says to a couple of teenagers, that is very, very similar to this line. Not to say anything, it doesn't matter. I mean, magpieing is all over. I mean, that's not even magpieing. Could be cryptomyosis, or it could be people independent thinking, people coming up with the same idea independently of each other. It is a thing, by the way. I just like, whenever I read that in this moment, I remember even as a teenager reading that and going, oh yeah, that reminds me of that S for You line that I really liked. God, I love John Mulch. I love Richard Belcher. It's all good. And here we go. Not here we go. So here we go. So there's a great, I think there's, oh yeah. So Rena says to Nate Patton, they could be kind of a cute couple, don't you think? And then there's a moment of great, like Nate is just, glaring at her, kind of scolding her. I can't even think of the word now. Anyway, he's glaring at her and she's going, what? But this moment here where we foreshadow Harvey Bullock of, and then she goes, Harvey, no, Harvey, I think, which is almost like a sigh, but there's so much made of this moment in this moment. Of course, Harvey Bullock, I think, is introduced in Frank Miller's Batman Year One, right, as the dirty cop. I love that introduction. Gotham is all I deserve now. Love that opening. I always remember that opening. I butchered it, but I always remember that opening. Anyway, so even in that moment, so much history is conveyed. Now, I want to know, is this an invention of Central Gotham? Or is it known that, okay, Rena Montoya is a uniform cop, then she becomes a detective, then she partners with Harvey Bullock. Harvey's obviously a dirty, corrupt cop, but their relationship is very, very interesting in terms of she's a rookie and, Harvey showed her the ropes. He showed her what to do as a cop, but also showed her what not to be and how not to be as a cop. So there's a very conflicting mentor relationship there. But even in this moment, you feel a lot of, I don't know what, like it's not delivered as like, oh, Harvey. It's not delivered. It's delivered with a lot of like conflict, like, oh, Harvey, where she has a lot of reverence for Harvey Bullock. But maybe I'm just projecting because we know where the story goes. I always remembered that, actually. I thought it was very, very interesting. One of the great things about Harvey Bullock, which I think is, I've not watched the Gotham TV show. My brother would roll his eyes at comic books. He wouldn't be dead seeing reading a comic book, because comic books are for kids. But he loves a lot of the CW stuff. Like, he loves the Flash TV series and the Green Arrow TV series and the Gotham TV series, but he won't read a comic book. And he kept saying to me, you like Batman? Why don't you watch Gotham? Watch Gotham, watch Gotham. And like, don't get me wrong. I remember the OC when I was a teenager, so I like Ben McKenzie. I even like the Ben McKenzie police procedural that he was in. I like, it's not Third Watch. I forgot about Third Watch. I like that as a police procedural as well. And don't get me wrong. I'm dating myself a lot. I watched Birds of Prey back in the day. So starved were we for anything Batman related on the box, especially in live action, that I watched and with the best one as well, Birds of Prey was abysmal. It was abysmal. Not the movie, the TV series. It was terrible. It was so bad. It kind of felt like it was coming out of that Smallville thing, but it was supposed to be like, I guess, like a dark. It was rough. It was so rough. And that's what, like, and dude, it was kind of interesting because the big bad is supposed to be Harley Quinn. And I think the woman who played Harley Quinn was a very interesting take on Harley Quinn, on a grown-up Harley Quinn. Or maybe not. I always remembered as a teenager it being an interesting take. Anyway, I'm sort of dragging this out more than it needs to be. But yeah, for me, I didn't really sync with Gotham. I tried and it just wasn't my thing. I'm sorry, guys. I'll go back and watch it, but I just wanted it to be Gotham Central, and it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted it to be like a hard police procedural that was like Gotham Central, and it wasn't. And that was my beef. Whereas, I'm not sure if I'd been more open to it if I'd have been a teenager, but because this is the stuff I was reading as a teenager that still holds up as an adult. Because, like I said, there's no action. It's just great work by Michael Lark, who's I would say, along with Noel Giddings, is really the MVP of this book. Like, Ed and Greg get to be very showy, and they get to be the writers. But for me, what holds this book together is Michael Lark's. Like, he really does knock it out of the park, man. The amount of per panel, per page is incredible. And the coloring just brings it alive. It just makes it sing and gives it such a unique identity. So yeah, I can't recommend Gotham Central enough. Maybe, I mean, the great thing about libraries, you guys, is every library has a great graphic novel section. And you can, even if they don't, you can smuggle it in. You start with Mouse, which is a Purlish Surprise book. Then you go to Persepolis. Then you go to maybe some Harvey Pekar stuff, some Joe Sacco stuff, Palestine, The Fixer, a whole bunch of Joe. And then maybe one of my favorite books of all time, Adrian Tormain's Killing and Dying. You smuggle them in. You smuggle them in with all that stuff, American Splendor, get the Daniel Clowes stuff going, get the Chris Ware stuff going, get the Seth stuff going, get the cartoonist through the front door, first and foremost, right? And then you move on to your Brian Talbot, your Alison Sunderland, your Luther Arkwright. Maybe get some Howard Chalk in American Flag, but maybe not, because they'll really come after you. And that's how you smuggle it in. You smuggle it in, and then you go, oh yeah, British Invasion. Then you go your Alan Moore, your Watchmen, your V for Vendetta, your From Hell. And then you start smuggling, your top 10, your Tomorrow Stories, your whatever, Then from more, then you go the Morrison route. Before you know it, you can smuggle in so much stuff under that radar, from independent stuff to commercial stuff, and then you'll get a pretty decent going graphic novel. So once they have that section, you can go to your library and you can ask them to order this book for you, right? I think libraries have to do that. I mean, they're getting, they're tax funded, right? So they're for the public. So you can go there without them being snooty because they're tax funded and say, yeah, I want to read a cop TV show, a police procedural as a comic book, and I want Gotham Central. It's won the highest awards in comics, the Eisner Award and the Harvey Award. It's a great book. We'll talk about the controversy of the LBGT. Oh my God, no. Oh my God, I'm so old. I don't know what that, because it has a gay subplot, and it's a minefield. It has a gay subplot, which I love, which is why I resonated with the book. That's what turned the book into a must read for me. But there's a little bit of controversy that Greg Rucka talks about in the introduction to volume 2, which of course is Half-Life. There's a little bit of controversy that he talks about, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that. So it's worthy. It's very, very worthy, right? Winner of the 2004 Eisner Award for Best Story. Holy crap! So it won an Eisner in this run. Then imagine the next run. Nope. You have volume 3, which is one of my favorites. Like, the writing on Harvey Bullock here is amazing. I really loved volume 3. And still remember that outside of being a teenager. So whole 2004 Eisner and Harvey Award winner. So they won the Eisner in 2004 and the Harvey, but they only put it on they only recognized the Harvey on the 5th trade. I want to talk about, this is really annoying. This is really annoying. I have no idea why they did this. And I don't know if you can see that, you guys, if you can see it on the spine here, maybe do it that way. What's crazy about this and the spine is you can see the different editions. That just hit me now. I don't know why they've done that, because it would have been nice to have 1, 2, 3, 4. What's the 5th book saying? Unbelievable. I just noticed that now. Ugh, boo. That won't look good on the shelf. That won't look good on the shelf at all. Ah, yeah. Okay, same thing. Same diff. So yeah, Eisner and Harvey Award. I mean, maybe that's a bit cheeky, isn't it? So it's got win of the 2004 Eisner Award for Best Story, right? And then they keep going, Eisner and Harvey Award winner. Yeah, in 2004 for one story, dick. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. That was Gotham Central. Blah, 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 blah. Next up will be Half-Life. And then I guess the plan will be to read each trade independently, review it, and then read all of it in one go. Not sure if I have the neural pathway energy for that, but we'll see if we can dedicate a whole day to reading it. I'll get up early, have a couple of coffees, read it all in one go, and then tell you how it holds up and my thoughts, maybe. I can't make you any promises. It just depends how I feel. I'm depressed. Leave me alone. All right. See you later.
Aubrey wasn't at death's door. It was halfway down death's passage, hanging up its coat.